All right, cool. So let's look at the first stage of finding a neutral pelvis. What this is, we're gonna be focusing on standing, we're gonna be focusing on sitting, kneeling / all fours, and then we're gonna learn how to brace and then breathe the correct way in these neutral positions, okay? So if you are dealing with back pain right now, your goal is to find out what neutral pelvis is, because ultimately, you're trying to build a new foundation when it comes to biomechanics, when it comes to movement, how you move every single day. You're trying to rebuild your foundation. Your foundation right now is on sand. It's rocky, it's falling down, you're in pain, things are shifted, you're not the way you should be. So you have to rebuild this layer or this foundation and then hopefully get to a point where you can start seeing relief. Okay, it's not gonna be 2 days from now or 7 days from now, or it could be weeks and months from now. The key is to learn how to groove your movements, your basic fundamental movements such as neutral spine, neutral pelvis, and working up from there. Okay, so looking at the standing. If you're dealing with back pain again right now, your goal is to find neutral pelvis. So how you're going to do that is obviously watch the video of where I talk about stacking your segments. So my head's stacked, my neck is stacked, my shoulders are stacked, they're back and down, my arms by my sides, my shoulder blades are engaged. Everything is engaged. From there, my hips are engaged and my feet are engaged with the ground, okay? So I can do all that, but I can still be in this super belly out, anterior pelvic tilted position. So what is neutral? What is finding neutral? We keep saying this, make sure you find neutral spine or neutral pelvis. No one's gonna get out some kind of graph or some kind of ruler to find what your specific neutral is. It's impossible in the average setting. What I want you to be able to do is, based off of how you feel, going off of what feels comfortable, what feels good to you, what feels pain-free as possible to you, that's what we're gonna grade it on, okay? So just turn your mind to how you feel, what your back feels right now, and when you're going to these positions, how your body's responding to it. So try to do what you think is neutral. Once you've stacked, I'm here, I'm kind of bracing a little bit, but this is what I think is neutral. Then what I want you to do is take your hands on top of your hips and just moving basically from below your hands. Think of your hands as a cueing tool, where I'm not doing this, I'm not trying to do that. What I'm doing is I'm using my hands to cue everything below my hands. So I'm here, I'm gonna posterior pelvic tilt, and I'm gonna anterior pelvic tilt. Posterior, anterior. It's actually, you won't have a big angle when it comes to the posterior pelvic. A lot of people are like, I don't think I have like a good posterior pelvic tilt, or is this good enough? Like, you're not gonna have a lot of movement this way because it's just not a natural large range of motion type movement, okay? So the anterior pelvic tilt, this is what I was stuck in for many, many years, and I'm still currently working on it now. This is where I would get my power from. This is what my position would be. So what I had to do is, using my cues, hands here, rock my pelvis back, forward, and I'm kind of learning what those end ranges are, and I'm coming in to the middle, slowly back and forth until I get to a point where, okay, that feels good. My back does not feel bad at all. And then I can restack myself and I kind of have an idea of where my neutral pelvis is, okay? So if you're here and your legs are shaking, you're trying to keep your butt squeezed so hard and your pelvis tilted back, it's not neutral, okay? And another cue, or be careful with doing, is watch how far you go into these end ranges of motion. So if you're going to the anterior pelvic tilt, for me, I have facet joint issues. I have that ruptured disc. So if I go too far into that area, I'm smashing on those discs again. And yes, they're very resilient, they're very strong, they can manage it. But if it causes irritation to me, I'm not gonna push through that. There's no reason to. So when it comes to you, just because your buddy can do way out here and you can only do to here, that's fine. Anterior pelvic tilt, posterior, anterior, posterior, and then find that neutral. And then from there, we're gonna go over the bracing and breathing. But for now, standing, finding neutral pelvis. Let's move on to the sitting. Awesome. So now we're in the sitting position, okay? A lot of us are at our desks like this, and what tends to happen, whether you have a hard chair like this, you have a computer chair, whatever you may have, what happens is after a while our butts tend to roll under. So we kind of sit on this posterior tilted, super opened up lumbar spine, and we kind of get comfortable here, and then we begin to round and get all this jacked up position. So when it comes to working at a desk, or if you're just resetting yourself, especially if you're brand new trying to get rid of your back pain or recovering from a back injury, you're really trying to desensitize your lower back. So we're moving from the standing to the sitting position. With the sitting, what I suggest you always do is come to the edge of your seat. That's usually where the hardest part is and the flattest part is for now, okay? And we'll kind of talk about what to do with the backrest. But for now, come to the edge of the seat. Again, I'm stacking my head, pulling my chin back and down, taking my arms. I've got a wall here, so I can't do too much, but I'm basically going to stack myself, pull everything back and down, chin's pulled back. I'm bringing my chest up, nice and squeezed. And now again, I'm trying to find this neutral pelvis. So if you're like me, you'll sit out here like this. This is how I used to kind of, for the most part, sit. I had this super cranked, I'd get to a point where it's like, boom, and I'd fall into this super anterior pelvic tilted position, and that lumbar spine would just be crushed for a while. And it's not stable. My stomach's not stable, nothing is stable here. So what you gotta do is find wherever you are normally sitting in, and from there, rock back and forth, again, trying to keep the movement to one area, which is just your pelvis, and find what you think is neutral. And once you find it, kind of get comfortable, restack yourself, brace, try to bring length to your spine, and you're sitting here like this, okay? And this feels like a pretty neutral position. I might, just because if the seat kind of slopes down into like a little bucket like most seats do, I might give myself a little bit of anterior pelvic tilt because my body is trying to already slouch into that seat. I'll come forward, and if this feels still kind of uncomfortable, I might bring a little bit of anterior pelvic tilt. I feel good here though. That's the main thing to always measure everything you're doing off of when it comes to low back injuries, is do what feels good. Don't go above that. And there's no reason to go below that, because your ultimate goal is to stay beneath your pain threshold. So you're here, I'm rocking, I have found my neutral pelvis by playing around a little bit. I find what feels good, and now again it's coming down to bracing and breathing, which we'll cover. So this is sitting. I'm here, I'm stacked, and then what you can do is when it comes down to getting into neutral position within the chair, you can kind of move back. And in this situation here, what I tend to do is I'll bring my legs a little bit wider than the seat. So I'm sitting like this now, okay? And from here, I can rock into posterior, anterior. Once I find it, from here, if you see my legs, I can engage my glutes. So I'm here working, I'll probably bring my desk to me, and then now I can sit here and I can work. My spine is in neutral position, it feels good. Number one rule, I don't have a mirror here, I don't have anything, I'm just going off of how I feel, and now I can work here comfortably, and then switching back and forth. So again, from a side view, I'm here, I'm taking my legs out a little bit wider, which allows me to kind of give myself a little bit of a flatter base. Anterior, posterior, I'm rocking back and forth, just in my pelvis, find what feels good to me is neutral, restack everything, and now I can work. Okay, so that's standing, that's sitting. So going through standing, going through sitting, now let's go through being on all fours. This is a little bit more of an active, neutral position, because from here, you're gonna learn how to roll and crawl and stuff like that when it comes to being in a neutral position, which again, is fundamental layers. I just wanna kind of give you an idea of the standing, the sitting, and now the being on the ground. We're gonna go actually from the crawling position to actually being on our back. So we're going to cover two different positions in this last video, or last section of the video. So grab a foam roller. Best thing to do, honestly, is like a Nalgene bottle, a full bottle of water. Basically what you can do is by rocking your pelvis back and forth on all fours, you're going to be able to find where the best ideal neutral spot for you is going to be, okay? So this time you're going a little bit further than just going off of how you feel. You're going off of where this is happening, what's going on with this foam roller. From, in my case, a foam roller. For your case, hopefully it's a water bottle, a big water bottle. And I'll show you kind of what to look for, what not to look for, what's going to happen if you do it wrong, what's going to happen if you do it right, and kind of how to play with right and wrong to get what's ultimately right, if that makes sense. Anyways, ultimately, let's just do it, okay? So what you're going to do is take your Nalgene bottle, take your foam roller, whatever you have here, and you're going to place it on your lower back, okay? So from here, I'll get into just kind of an anterior pelvic tilted position, just to kind of make sure that thing doesn't roll off on me too soon. And what I'm going to do is get used to how this thing moves around, okay? And then what I'm going to do is begin to push out and brace and find what I think is neutral. Now, this being a foam roller, it's probably not the best thing to use just because it's too light. I can push it off very easy, where if there's a bottle of water, it's a little bit heavier. And it stays put a little better. But ultimately, it's the same idea. So from here, I'm going to rock my pelvis back and find what I think is neutral. And I think that feels pretty good. What I can do is, if I'm just starting out, I don't care if it falls off. I can go to the anterior pelvic tilt. I know that's way too much. I can go to posterior and push until that foam roller falls off. And then I can say, okay, how does this feel? I can look in a mirror if I have a mirror in front of me. Do I feel kind of rounded? Is my pelvis tilted back or too far forward? What am I doing? So from here, take my cue or my tool, put it back up here, go back to that same spot and see if I can stay there before it falls off. From here, I can learn to brace and breathe and find that neutral, and then still play with that last little ½ inch of where it's gonna fall off. Then I can kind of adjust and practice bracing and breathing. So again, this is simply just a tool for you to use to help find what that neutral spine is and that neutral pelvis. It's just a cue, it's just a way of practicing, okay? So now we're gonna go to our backs. So what you're gonna do from here, very simple, hopefully you can see me. I hate when people use the dead bug exercises and stuff like that, and not cue the fact that you don't have to have your back flat pressed up against the ground when you're trying to learn what neutral is. Because what happens is people will engage your glutes and they'll almost hyper, or just not hyper, but they'll basically yank their pelvis in this posterior tilted position just to screw and flatten their back into the ground. Well, this isn't a natural position. This is not a flat back. This is not even a neutral back. It's overly tilted pelvis. It's basically what it is. So what I want you to do is you can take a towel, like a hand towel or like a beach towel, and just kind of bring it together and roll it under your lower back. Just so you don't roll it up into a big, like something like this thick, but you want it to be just enough to be under your lower back to kind of give some support and give you a natural arch, okay? So from here, my knees are bent. Very simple, and I'll just take this arm up so you have some space so you can see what's going on. Take my pelvis again, and I'm just rocking anterior or posterior pelvic tilt, anterior pelvic tilt, posterior, anterior. And what I'm looking for is that moment right past that flat back. So I can posterior tilt my back or my pelvis, and my back is flat. I want to come off that a little bit, okay? Play with what it feels like to come off of that over posterior tilted pelvis and find what that feels like. How does that feel? Can you lift your leg up without pain? Can you do a little bit of rotation without pain? Drop your legs down a couple inches. I'm not talking about doing full blown exercises, but does this feel good? Like, what does this feel like in my lower back? Okay, so from here I can play with it. If I have to tilt it back more to flatten it more because that feels better for me, then do it. If you have to come out of that flat position to a more naturally rounded position in lower back, then do it. The key is, again, find what feels good to you and stick to that and learn to brace around that specific place, okay? So again, I'm on my back. I'm not looking for a super flat back. I'm looking for a ribs down, braced position with a slight natural arch. Get used to what natural arch feels like to you. It's gonna be different for everybody, okay? So find that position that feels good, that's not painful. Again, you can bring your legs to 90 if you want, just to kind of lock that in and see how this feels. I'm not super flat. I'm not overextended. I'm finding what feels like neutral to me. Again, it's all based off of how